to TLC, where we dive into the heart of our local community, its wineries, restaurants, businesses, and real estate. Hi, I'm your host, Troy Anderson, and I'm here with Pamela, and we have a special guest here today, Cody Touchette from Movement Mortgage. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, that's awesome.
This should be a good one.
Yeah, we're going to talk all about investment properties.
We are, but first we're going to just dive straight into our first segment. You want to talk about investments? Yeah. Okay, but slow the roll, okay? We're going to start with Sipping on Success. You've got a fantastic bottle of wine, apparently, so let's dig into that first. So our first segment, Sipping on Success. What have you brought for us this week, Troy?
I have brought a 2019 Quilceda Creek Columbia Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. It is the papa of Cabernets.
Oh, really?
Good.
So it was really interesting as we were setting up for the podcast and Cody came in, he said, oh, there's really good wine there. And I'm thinking, oh, so Troy's saving the good stuff when people who know about wine come in, and then he serves me the substandard. That's not true, but that's kind of how it feels.
The porch pounder?
Yeah, okay.
Porch pounder.
You got it in, that's it.
I
no
got
more.
it in.
No more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every episode we got to get that in.
This one's not a pounder at all. This one's
No, this is, I probably should have decanted it, actually.
Well, it looks really deep and dark.
Yeah, it's 100% Cabernet, which for a winemaker, that's a difficult thing to do, to make a really good 100% of something.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, most Washington wines, or most wines, are actually blended with other grapes. And to call it a Cabernet Sauvignon, it has to have at least 75%. So even some Cabernet Sauvignons have some Merlot, they have some Petit Verdot, they have some other blending grape in there. So, but for a winemaker to make 100% Cabernet, there's no room for error. Basically, then they can't, touch it up with something else that might have a different flavor profile.
Right.
So, and this is it's aged 20 months in New French oak, and it got 99 points by. I can't read that, it's too small. Jen Dunnick. So it's a Quilceda Creek consistently gets 98, 99, 100. I think their 2018 got 100, and that was their 40th year producing Cabernet Sauvignon here in Washington.
Well, I feel really honoured because I've never even heard of this winery. So.
They're in Snohomish.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually went to high school with Paul Galitzin. He's the owner and proprietor.
Well, there
Quilceda
goes the answer
Creek.
to their question of why did you pick this winery then? One, because it's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. Two, because you know the owner. Shocking.
Well, I haven't seen Paul for several years.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So apart from those
I had the
two
privilege
things...
of going to high school with him, and we used to be ski buddies.
Oh,
fun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right, well, let's cheers.
Cheers.
And let's try it. Okay.
How's that?
Wow. I'm speechless.
Yeah?
That doesn't happen very often.
You're going to have to edit that awkward pause out.
I know. That is really something else. I'm not sure that I've tried a wine that is that smooth before.
That's really smooth.
These guys really know what they're doing for
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
I've been a club member for this club for a long time now, and I've got several bottles of this dating back a number of years.
Yeah.
And they really just get better
Oh,
as
really?
well. This is the kind of wine you can lay down for 40 years in your cellar.
Yeah. This is when you can age.
You can.
Yeah.
Because it's 100% or...
Just because of the quality of the way it's made.
I feel like we're all just
We are all speechless. It's crazy.
I know. It's like, okay, let's try and describe it so that our listeners can partake, orally in what we're trying here.
It's a little thick, and it's got lots of fruit, and then but it just lingers forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It just has this kind of burst of flavour in your mouth, and it's really hard to kind of capture each one of the, what it is you're actually tasting. So Troy, you're the expert. Let's hear what you're.
I'm on the spot.
Yeah, on the spot, Johnny. Come on.
A little bit of dark cherry, and then it's got a little bit of smoky flavor. I can get that a little bit, but it's really smooth. It doesn't bite you at all.
It's not dry either.
No, No.
which is really interesting because you
Yeah.
always expect a little bit of dryness with the red wine, but there's really very, very little of it. It's almost like the dryness comes well after the flavor's finished.
And I'd bet that this wine's going to taste even better in about an hour. Like I said,
Is it going to last that long?
Yeah.
Probably not.
I mean, I'm just asking.
I get the berries and the fruit as well, but it's not jammy. You know, I don't like a real jammy wine, but this just has, like you said, the pop of the flavor, but then it just dissipates, and then there's another flavor that comes in. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the kind of wine that I would love to curl up with a really good book by the fire and just enjoy this.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
It's just, I mean, you know, we're going into summer and it feels like a great wine to drink there, but it's got that heaviness to it that would be really great on a cool, you know, crisp autumn evening.
Go with like a nice beef barley soup or something.
Yeah, or a really good hearty stew.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
you go.
or a cottage pie. Or okay, why do we keep doing this? Every
I'm
time
getting
we start
hungry.
talking
I
about
know,
food,
we
then we
start
get hungry. We'll have to stop doing the food pairings while we're talking about wine. Well, I think that's actually really quite exceptional. So I don't think there's much more to say about it other than I think, you know, if you haven't tried it before, really you should give them a look.
Yeah, you
and
can
a
get it
taste.
at higher end wine stores. The club pretty much sells out every year, and within weeks of being released.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Cody,
So-
you're a club member?
I am a club member.
Troy, are you a club member?
I am a club member, yeah.
Why am I not surprised? We need to keep a tally of how many club members you've got.
Don't tell my wife.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
we won't tell
We
them.
don't talk about the number of clubs we're in. Come
No?
on.
So is it normal to be in more than one or two?
Well, for me,
Yeah?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All
Find
right.
something you like.
Well,
And this one, you don't get off the list.
Yeah.
You stay on the list because there's a waiting list to get on it.
Oh, really? So it's
Yeah,
that
you have
exclusive.
to continue to buy too, otherwise you'll find your way
Right.
off the list. So
Correct.
even if it's just a couple bottles, you've got to pick something up. But
Okay.
I like to always make sure I get a few because I like to stack up the
Yeah.
vertical as well.
Have a
right?
vertical
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
more than one vertical.
They're all of this caliber?
What's that?
The wines? They're all
Oh
of this
yeah, I mean,
caliber?
I would say
Caliber?
some are better.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, I think
I
what
think
is it
this
like?
one's a little young.
16 is like and typically their best years are the even years as well. I found
Huh.
16, 14, 18, like those are spectacular wines. I don't know that there's any reason
18
to
for
that.
Washington was a stellar year just for winemakers.
Yeah, we talked
They-
about that a
yeah.
couple of weeks ago, didn't
We
we?
did,
That
yeah.
was supposedly for across the board felt like a good year.
And I only have one bottle of 18 left, so I wasn't willing to sacrifice.
Fair
it.
enough. Yeah, totally. Well, and this one is it's very good, but it's not always a very approachable bottle for the casual wine drinker. They
Oh,
also
right.
make a bottle they call the CVR, which is
Okay.
about a third of the cost of this bottle.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, when you said it not being approachable, is that from a cost standpoint?
Yeah, this
okay.
is probably like in the wine club, you're probably spending $150 to $160 for the bottle.
Wow, Troy, big spender.
And then,
was all
sorry
for
if
you,
I blew you out there
it
with
was
your
all
wife.
for
Yeah.
you. It was all for you, Cody.
Fair enough. Well, I appreciate it. But the CVR is like $45 a
Okay.
bottle. So, and that's their Columbia Valley Red CVR, and it's a mix, right?
It
It's
is
a
a
blend, but it's spectacular, right? I mean, there's some really like those are just always good as well. And again, I think you mentioned it. There's a little room for error, if you will, right? Like when you blend those grapes together, then you can depend on those to bring a little different flavor profile. Where 100% of one grape's a little harder to make. And then they still use their same techniques and same everything, just a bigger blend of grapes, and
I think they press it too. They didn't. This is all free run.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
What
it's a
does that mean?
spectacular.
So wine typically goes into a press, and you squeeze the grape skins, and more wine comes out. But it also brings out more astringent flavors from the skins and different things.
So we're not,
They might
we're not-
lightly press this. I'm not 100% sure,
Okay.
but I was told by somebody over a wine conversation that it's mainly free run, meaning it just runs off. They don't press any of it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they squish but don't press.
Correct.
Cool.
So they're not in there with their feet squishing the grapes like you see
I
in
don't think
movies.
so. Yeah, no.
Got it.
I don't know if that would be fun or not, actually. No, I don't think it would be.
I think it'd be
Bare
fun
feet.
for like 5 minutes, and then you'd be like, okay, I'm done with this, and then
Well,
you have hours more to do, right?
One, I think it would be kind of a gross feeling, and two, who really wants to drink wine that people's feet spinning?
Right.
You'd have to wash pretty good before that, yeah.
All right, well, that's a sensational bottle of wine. Thanks very much for bringing that in, Troy. That's
My pleasure.
really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks again. This is nice.
Yeah. Very grateful that you decided to share that with us. All right, well, I think that's the end of that first segment of Sipping on Success. We're going to take a really quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to chat with Cody about investing in property and real estate.
Awesome.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this very short break.
Homeowners and aspiring buyers looking for a real estate team who are about you and your community? Look no further than Tend Home Team. We are here to help you navigate the sometimes overwhelming world of real estate. From buying to selling, we've got your back. Let's work together to find your dream home or sell your current one. Contact us today, tendhometeam.com. Let's get started. Welcome back to TLC 10 Life Community Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Anderson, along with Cody and my co-host, Pamela. And we're going to dive right in here to our community connection and real estate roundup. It's going to be all things Cody.
I think that's a great idea. Well, he's the expert on interest rates and mortgages and loans and all that kind of stuff.
So Cody, I'm often asked, what are some key factors that potential investors should consider before diving into the world of property investment or investing in real estate in our local area here?
Yeah. One of the very first questions that I typically ask somebody is to take it back even a couple more steps, or what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. Because we have different investors that have different ideas, right? And so some people are looking for preservation of capital and appreciation. The Northwest, where we're at, is a spectacular way to invest in real estate to get those things. Uh-huh. Some people are looking for predictable cash flow to be able to retire on or pay their monthly bills, right? A lot of our investors are even younger folks, mid-tier, or even older folks where they're just trying to replace income. And so if you're trying to replace income, then cash flow is king, right? We want to get regular, predictable monthly cash flow. And in the current today's market, right, that's a little harder to do in the Pacific Northwest without getting creative or being a value-add investor. So if you're looking just to buy something that's turnkey, not a lot of renovations, and you're looking for appreciation, you're in the right spot, right? This is a great spot for that. I mean, typically, the last 12 months have been a little hard on the appreciation front, of course, right? But we had runs where 2-3 years before that, we were getting double-digit
Right, we saw 10 years appreciation in 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah, so we had... in the year before this last year, we had 25% appreciation. Reasonable to think we might come back down a little bit, back down to earth, right? Yeah. Historically, if you look at the numbers that we track is 63 years, on average, King, Snohomish, Pierce counties have returned almost 6%.
Okay.
A rate of return on appreciation. And so one of the things that we love to look at there from a more of a financial planning perspective and a future perspective is we use the rule of 72. You guys familiar with the rule of 72?
I'm not. I'm sure Troy is.
Yeah.
Not particularly. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Easy math. Rule of 72 is you take 72 divided by your rate of return, and that's how quickly your money will double.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So if you had something that provided you a 7.2% rate of return, mm-hmm. the rule of 72 says you would double your money every 10 years.
Right.
Okay, so in the Northwest, our market appreciation has been about 5.8% over the last 63 years. That works out to be about every 15 years. So you take 72 divided by the 5.8, it's about mm-hmm. 15. So the thing I like to look about is we're typically borrowing money on a 30-year mortgage, and so if you bought a house today at $500,000. In 15 years, you wouldn't have half of your mortgage left, right? Because that's not how mortgages work. No. They're a little front-loaded on the old interest. But at the 15-year mark, we'd expect that $500,000 house to be worth about $1 million.
Right.
And then at the end of the 30-year mark, when your mortgage is now paid off mm-hmm. in full, that $500,000 house goes from $500,000 to $1 million. Then it doubles again from $1 million to $2 million. Right, and when I say that to new clients or prospective mm-hmm. investors, they think, "Oh, no way! You're crazy." And I say, "Well, I get it, right? I understand, and it's just math, and I can't predict that we're going to get 5.8% rate
No,
of
but you're
return
going
every
based
single
on
year.
history.
Yeah,
right?
I can't predict that we're going to get that. But and people say, and this is one of my favorite things to say, is like, well, what's your crystal ball say? I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have a rear view mirror.
Yeah.
And the rear view mirror is right every time because I get to look at historical data. And so I say, if you don't believe that this house for 500 today is going to be worth 2 million in 30 years, let's go backwards.
Let's look backwards.
Let's
for
look
sure.
backwards, right? Because if that $500,000 house is a split level house in Everett and it's 50 years old, we have data,
Yeah.
right? We can go back and we can say, what did it sell for 15 years ago? What did it sell for 30 years ago? And it always pans out, right? And so again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where things are going to go. But if past is any indication of the future,
Right.
then that's what very well could happen.
Yeah, and things tend to track the same way. It's not like, you know, it takes something big to happen to kind of distort where it's going to go, right?
And I'm not taking the 25% appreciation per year in forecasting when your house is going to double, because we all knew that was a little bonkers.
Yeah.
But if you take a 63-year average where there were up years and down years, and you look at it long term, that's what it would be. So to answer that question, like, what are we looking for, right? What's your goal? Do you want to see the value of something you buy today quadruple in 30 years? Spectacular, right? And you think about from an investment standpoint too, you're not putting in 500 grand to take it from 500 to 2 million. You're putting in 20% down. So you're putting in 100 grand to this investment, especially if we're talking about investment, right? You buy a house or a duplex and somebody else is paying the payment. Even if you cash flow neutral, you turn 100 grand today into 2 million paid off in 30 years. I can't find a better investment.
No.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to kind of describe it to people, because I think people get bogged down in the, you know, the details of like, okay, owning a house is expensive, and you know, it's the biggest purchase that people are ever going to make. It's the biggest investment they're going to make, but it can be super scary. And then there are people there that would love the idea of maybe having a second property to use for cash flow or income. But it's a scary idea. You know, you guys are used to it because you deal with this all the time, but Joe Blogs on the street doesn't, you know, so it's sounding as though, you know, thinking about property, taking the emotion out of property as buying it as a home for you and your family or whatever, but thinking about it in different terms as investment is actually quite intriguing and not quite as scary as people think.
That's right, and that's a brilliant way to think about it. Is you think about it as a business, right? It's not a home. It's not a place for you to live. This is a little business.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put 100 grand into it. Hopefully, it makes me some dollars every month, and then in the long run, it's gonna really pay off.
Right.
Right.
So I think from my perspective, so you guys are the experts here, so I'm going to kind of talk for the people, if you like.
Love
it. You know, because I work in real estate, but you know, I do the marketing. You guys are the,
Sure.
you know. But yes, you've got investment properties which you can make the income from, but people need to also remember that their houses, when they're scared about, okay, it's cost this much every month to pay the mortgage and it's a down payment of this, it is also an investment. It's an investment in your future. And yes, it's daunting right now, but again, think about it in terms of a business and what it could potentially have for you in the future, whether that's something you leave as a legacy for your family or, okay.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is the cash flow piece, right? If that's what's important, is it important right now, right? Because that's what we are talking about, specifically in today's market with rates being higher than they were over the last few years. It's been a little more challenging to make a property make sense from a cash flow perspective, right? Say, well, okay, you're looking to make $400 per property in cash flow, and right now it makes $100 a month,
Right.
or maybe even zero. And I say, okay, well, do you need $400 a month right now? Well, no, but I'd like it to be a good investment. Okay, well, let's forecast forward a couple years, right? We expect interest rates to come back down as inflation moderates. We'll expect to refinance anything we're doing this year or even last year into much better rates coming forward. So we can save some money there. But then I also pull out a graph of, we've tracked national rent averages going back to 1940. And this graph literally just goes up, right?
Yeah.
There's a window of time in 2011-12 where it kind of flattens out, right? And if you
That
weren't
was during the
and that
big
was
crash.
the recovery from the crash,
Right.
where people were becoming more creditworthy again. There was a first-time homebuyer tax credit. Government was really encouraging people to buy homes. And so if you've got a lot of people buying homes all at once, then there's less people renting. So in that window of time,
rents come down to attract more people.
they didn't actually even come down, they just flattened out.
Just flat out.
On this graph, dating back to like 1940, there was never a spot where rents went down,
Wow.
right? Never
That's
a spot.
something to consider.
There really is, yeah, because I mean that's a worry for people. It's like, okay, what if I can't rent out that property that I've spent, I've put my nest egg into as an investment?
Yeah.
But it sounds like I mean, you could have a small period of time where you don't rent it out, but data says it's probably going to be
Yep.
a small worry.
And vacancy nationally is at its lowest point we've seen in quite some time too. Part of that is because we haven't been building enough homes, right? When the market crashed in 2006, 7, 8, there was a lot of builders that lost their shorts, right? And we saw,
Nice way of putting it.
specifically in the Northwest too, we saw a ton of underdeveloped plats, right? Things that they were moving along and all of a sudden it got shut down, right? And so we stopped building for a period of a few years, right? And then last year, obviously COVID hit.
Yeah.
There was a whole lot of builders that just pushed pause. No, thank you. I don't want to build right now. Or physically weren't allowed to swing the hammer for a while, right? So we've really put ourselves in a tough spot.
But then the market really took off.
Yeah.
21 and 22.
Sure
I
did.
know.
Yeah.
That's when I first kind of came into real estate
it was
with
like
you guys.
fast
It's
and
like,
furious.
this is nuts.
Yeah. But then around this time last year, also we started seeing builders pull out of developments as well.
Correct.
Right. There was big national builders that were pulling out and losing earnest money, like millions of dollars in earnest money, because they didn't want to keep going on a development project because they were unsure what the next year will bring.
And their cost of money went up too.
Right? Exactly. The loans that they're using to build these developments, spiked from 2 something to 6, 7, 9%
Right.
something, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Depending on the level of quality of the builder and their credit worthiness. Yeah, some of these projects went from very, very cheap money to very expensive money, and it didn't make sense anymore.
Right.
So now, again, we talk about inventory and home selling, but we talk about vacancy and being an investor. And vacancy is also a function of how many homes are out there. And when there's very, very low inventory, that also means there's not a lot of available homes to rent. And so inventory levels are low, but also vacancy levels are very, very low as well.
What is a good vacancy rate to calculate when you're looking at an investment?
Yeah, when I'm underwriting a deal, I'm thinking about, I'm usually using 10%.
Really?
Yeah, and that, I don't know, that may be high, that may be low, but like I like to look at vacancy. I'm glad you brought that up. I like to look at vacancy as like, well, how many months is it?
Yeah.
Right, at 10%, it's 1.2 months per year.
Yeah.
If you have somebody leave, it takes a month to fill that property up if it doesn't need a
Usually.
ton of work.
Yeah.
Right? If it needs a ton of work, it might be 2. But if it's in just decent shape, you got to get them out. You got to advertise it. You got to have an open house or have some people come in, sign a lease. They want to move in on the 1st of the next month. You're going to have a month of vacancy, right? And so if you figure on 1 month of vacancy per unit of a property, I think that's almost as conservative as you can get when you're underwriting a property.
For sure.
If I've got a property I know is in rough shape and it's got 10 units and I'm going to need to maybe vacate it to get everybody out of there and fix it up and get new tenants in, then I'm underwriting the first few years at maybe 50% vacancy.
Gotcha.
So depends on the property, but the ongoing 10% is a good number, and then I try to maintain it at 5.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm underwriting at 10, but I can maintain at 5, then my investment's a good investment.
I always kind of calculate at 5 when I'm doing a pro forma analysis for someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to be a little more conservative in the things
when
I
you're buying
underwrite.
it, right?
As I buy,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the reason why is then I'd much rather lose by not writing an offer and not buying a property than to lose by buying a property and having it not work out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I bought those before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people asking, like I've made so many mistakes buying real estate.
Oh, sure.
Right, but the longer I hold the real estate I have, the smarter I look.
Yeah.
It's one way to look at it.
Yeah, I just look better and better, like just a genius 5 years into a deal that was a really tough deal the first year or two that I had it.
But it's just trying to keep hold of the reins of that and not kind of running scared from it.
Partly because rents just continue to go up.
Right.
Right?
Okay. All right, so this question is kind of for both of you, right? Somebody who is new to property investment, what advice would you give them on selecting the right properties to invest in, whether it's residential property or commercial?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe we should stick with the residential and just kind of go from there
Well,
and see where we sparkle.
Let's define it first. So residential is going to be 1 to 4 units, and then commercial is going to be 5 units and up, or industrial building or retail building, something like that.
Yeah. I personally, all right, this is my own personal. I'm not interested in office, and I'm not all that interested in retail, right? So like I prefer housing, right, living or storage, right? Storage is spectacular because in a 100-unit apartment building, you have 100 toilets and 100 kitchens. In a 100-unit storage facility, you have 1 toilet and no kitchens, right?
Less maintenance, yeah.
Storage is spectacular, but storage is a business with an employee or 2 or 3, right? Where buying apartments or single-family house, I can just put a property management in place and they handle it, and it's not really an employee,
It's
right?
still an expense.
It's an expense, but generally speaking, it's 10% or so of the monthly rent, not a $4,000 a month salary, or times 2 or 3, depending on how many people you need. So I personally, I love storage, but I don't want to run storage, so I have invested in some storage investments. So like a storage fund or a specific syndication where somebody's raising money to go buy and operate storage. I don't want to.
So that's where you get together with other investors and pool your money.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Either buy into a fund where they go out and buy storage
Got it.
complexes, and you own everything that they buy.
And there's some performer that they operate under.
Yeah, exactly. And,
There's actually funds, sorry to interrupt, there's funds that actually do that for property as well, not just storage. So you can buy into those funds where you end up owning a portion of the property along with everybody else in that fund, which is I guess it's a nice way for people to wet their feet into the property investment market, but probably not the same returns.
It's not the same returns. However, I've got a friend, and I was counseling him and like say, hey, I would love for you to get in some rental real estate. Here's what it's done for me. I see what it could do for you. And he, wanted to catch up a little on retirement and that sort of thing. And he was very interested and just couldn't pull the trigger on any individual properties. Okay. And so then I met some folks that were doing this originally syndication, and then they moved into a fund, and they were offering shares in all the properties they've already bought, as well as shares in the properties that they're going to be buying.
Wow.
Heavy renovation, heavy value add, so really good upside potential. Again, not as good if you had bought the property yourself, but kind of a mid-tier, right? And so I told him about this. We went to a meeting, and he's like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, right? Because he just couldn't pull the trigger on doing it himself because he didn't want to make a mistake, and he had confidence in the operators, right? Like we'll call the operator of the fund, the person that's sourcing the properties, doing the pro formas, getting the renovations done, and then re-tenanting the properties and managing them going forward.
On their track record, right?
Based on their track record, exactly.
Cool.
So if you're not interested in any individual property, there are other ways to do that where you can hand over your money and get a good return along the way. Again, maybe not as good as if you just buy, but
So someone who wants to get into it, they've got many different options, and they don't have to go buy a brick and mortar. They can invest in a fund and just look at how the money makes money.
yeah.
But let's go back to the brick and mortar, because
Yeah,
I think that's, people that maybe want to foray into it will want a little bit more information. And as you guys do this for yourselves, what are you looking for in an individual property? Whether it's, are you looking mainly for single families, or are you looking for something with a dadu in the back, or are you looking for a duplex, or what kind of floats your boat, if you like?
Yeah. Well, I'll go first. That's right.
Have at it.
There's so many choices, right? So I typically have been looking for multifamily only. The reason why is I don't prefer single family because of vacancy, right? You have one person leave.
It's 100% vacant when they leave.
It's 100% vacant the entire time they're gone, so I got to cover the entire payment. In a fourplex, the other 3 tenants will 100% cover the mortgage on my expenses and probably still make me a couple bucks.
Okay.
Right? A duplex is a good way to get started. Fourplexes are a little hard to find, right? They haven't built as many. I would love to see them build more.
I was going to say, where are they around here?
Linwood, Auburn,
South
Everett.
Everett's good.
Yeah, they're around. Duplex, triplex, fourplex, spectacular. You go beyond that, you get into 5, and now you're into a commercial loan. So a commercial loan is dramatically different than residential loan. Probably the biggest difference is usually commercial's not 30-year fixed. 1 through 4 units is 30-year fixed. 1 through 4 units, you can survive on your own financial independence as well. So like if you make a lot of money, you could buy a property that doesn't look great on paper. And with a commercial loan, you can't.
Yeah.
Right? Typically, they want that property to be performing at a certain coverage ratio, right? If your mortgage is going to be $10,000, they want 12.5 in rent,
Okay.
right? Or maybe even a little more in today's market.
And that's like a DSCR loan.
It underwrites like a DSCR loan. That's
Gotcha.
all commercial, right?
Okay.
Commercial is always in what DSCR is, debt service coverage ratio, right? So if you've got a debt service of 10,000, you're covering that by 125%, right? So a $10,000 payment and 12.5 in rent. In the residential mortgage world, why that's important, why it's good to be able to, some might say, be able to make a mistake and buy something that doesn't cash flow right away, is because maybe it's heavy value add. And that's really, you ask what I'm looking for. For me, it's value add, right? I want to be able to affect the value of a property. And so if I look at a fourplex and its payment's going to be $6,000 a month, but it only brings in $4,000 a month right now, the commercial guys say, don't do that, right? That doesn't make any sense. But if I look at it and say, well, I could put 20 grand into each one of these units, 30 grand into the exterior of the property, I'm into it for another 110 grand, and I can raise the rents up to 8,000 a month. Well, to me, that's a winner, because not only that, but I'm putting 110 into it, but I'm probably increasing the value by 250, 300, right? So I'm creating value by my finding a deal, buying something nobody else wants. Well, not nobody anymore, right? A lot of people want to do this, but buying something that the vast market doesn't want, and then fixing it up and creating that value, creating that increase in rent, and I get to increase my own net worth because I do that, and I get to increase the cash flow. Then I more than likely can come back and show the bank, hey, this thing makes $8,000 a month. I want to do a cash out refinance, get my money back
Get
out,
your cash out that you put
and then
in.
do it again with the same money.
Yeah.
That's what we call a BRRRR in the business. Okay, so BRRRR is an acronym for
Lots
buy,
of acronyms in this.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like,
discard,
my head's
BRRRR.
going,
Yeah.
So BRRRR, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this, but just in case you haven't, BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, refi, or excuse me, I
Rent.
can't even say it, rent. Buy, renovate,
That
rent,
wine's gone to your head, isn't it?
refi, it sure has. And then the last R on there is repeat.
Yeah.
Right? The idea being that you can use the same capital to do this transaction over and over again. And that's when somebody comes to me and say they have 100 grand and they want to get started investing. I say, cool, do you want to buy one property or multiples? Usually they want to buy multiples. Because if you have 100 grand to invest, you can buy a $400,000 duplex with your 100 grand and then you're done. And if that property makes $1,000 a month, let's say that's probably generous, but let's say it makes $1,000 a month, it's going to take you 100 months to get $100,000 again to do it again.
Right.
Right? But if you do it with my style, with the value add or the BRRRR, you can take 100 grand and then come back and do a cash out refinance 6 months to a year later and do it again and again and again.
Okay. How about you, Troy? I've got questions, but how about
Sure.
you? What would you?
Well, I've recently changed my strategy. I mean, I'd like to invest in more turnkey ready cash flowing properties. I do like the value add aspect of it, and I really love the DADU.
I love that word.
DADU. That's a DADU. That's another acronym.
No, I
right?
did.
What's a dadu? Sure is.
A couple of months ago, I was like, what does that mean? What is a dadu?
Detached accessory dwelling unit.
There you go.
So,
And what does that mean?
What does that mean? That means like a tiny house in your backyard.
There you go. Tiny house in your backyard.
Yep,
That's right.
That's an easy way to understand that. And that tiny house could be 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, so not so tiny.
Not so tiny. Well, it could be 500 square feet and no
it could be,
bedrooms.
yeah, for sure,
But
for sure.
I love that too. And with the rule changes in the state, right? Specifically Seattle and Kirkland.
Right, Seattle and Kirkland have already adopted this, and we're seeing a lot of development around that.
And actually just did one in Olympia. It's just hit the market.
Okay.
And you can do that as well. So what you do is we renovated the house because it was in decent shape. And then we did a survey, figured out exactly where our corners were, put a line down the middle of the backyard, and built a small 2-bedroom single-family house in the backyard. We didn't have to do a subdivision, but what we did do to make them legal was to do a condo.
Yeah.
So now this is a 2-unit condo complex,
And you can sell them separately, though.
and I'm selling them separately. They're listed individually.
Yeah. And you can do that in Kirkland?
You can do it in Kirkland, Seattle, and I found out Olympia as well.
Wow.
Oh, and now does the property need to be a certain size? So the grounds, the
yes,
square footage
it
of
does.
the lot. Sorry,
Yeah, and
grounds.
that varies from city to city,
Okay.
and it also depends on access too, right? So if you've got something with an alley access, that's great,
Perfect.
right? Or if you've got a house where the house is moved over, almost all the way to one side, and there's a driveway to a garage in the backyard, perfect as well.
Okay, fascinating.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next subject, I wanted to go back just really quickly, if that's all right, Troy. You talked about, where you can take the money from one and move it to the other to move it to the other. Now, if you're somebody that already owns a home that you live in, and that's your, it's an investment, but it's really your castle, right? People might be scared of like investing and taking money and moving it to do more if there's a chance that their primary residence could be kind of on the hook if something happens. Is there a way to negate that risk? Is that possible?
Yeah, if you were going to utilize the equity in your castle, as you say, which I like, to get started on this. Yeah, I mean, you would typically do that in the form of either a cash out refinance, where you'd replace the existing mortgage you have, pull some cash out, and then have that money in the bank ready to go do a project. Now, most of our clients these days don't want to do a cash out refinance because their first is at 2.75, right? And the new rates are
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
not 2.75, right? Considerably higher. So if they want to do that, they might look at a home equity line of credit, right? So a second mortgage behind their first. As far as like protecting that, not really, right? I mean, as long as you make your payments, then nobody's going to come knocking. Right?
Unless you have cash in the bank and you can keep it completely separate from.
Yeah.
So if you've managed to save some money, and you don't have to then sign away anything to do with your castle.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you've got money in the bank already and you've got a spare $100,000, you're not sure what to do with, right? Because I mean,
That'd be nice.
yeah. Well, I mean, if otherwise it would go in the stock market,
Yes.
right? Which been good, but also been bad. And now this year to date, if you've been in tech, you've been recovering.
Right.
You're not up over the last 2 years, but you're recovering.
Yeah.
If S&P 500's doing okay, right? But like a lot of times people they put money in the market. They're not a good stock picker. They pick a few. This one goes way down. This one goes up, and they end up
It's
flat.
break even, yeah.
They end up flat for 2 years. You're like, oh, I should have maybe done something different with that money. I feel like real estate's a great alternative to that because you can, 1, make cash flow, 2, force appreciation, and then 3, get the regular appreciation that normally comes anyways. 4, there's so many great reasons to invest in real estate. 4 is especially non-owner occupied or investment property, someone else is paying down your principal, so
Right.
that your mortgage amount's going down, and then also the tax advantages, right? We have I'm not a CPA, but the tax advantages are we would just barely touch the iceberg on this, what we've got left of our podcast, but there's significant advantages to investing in real estate, especially if someone in the household can claim real estate professional status, which would either be from being a real estate agent, or if somebody in the house doesn't have a job, they could go get a real estate license, log a few hours, and then boom, you're a real estate professional.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good to know.
You write off a lot more expenses. that way.
Tons. And let me take one step back to the other thing I like right now, which is single family, which I had stayed away from, but short-term rental, right? Or single family STR. So short-term rental would be think about, you're going to go on vacation, you're going to rent a house, Airbnb, VRBO, something like that. I sold an 18 unit in Oklahoma City, which was just okay. Get my pun there.
Very good, Cody. Very good.
It wasn't great. It was
It
just
took me a
okay.
second there.
Yeah. And I sold that, and I bought a luxury single-family house in Scottsdale, Arizona. And that property in Oklahoma was probably making $2,000 a month, maybe. Right, which sounds pretty good.
And
Make
how
it
many
on
units?
top of the payment.
18.
18 headaches.
18 toilets, 18 kitchens,
Right.
right? Yeah, you
So
got
when
it.
you say 2,000, that's in addition to paying off the mortgage on that
Net,
property.
net. Pay off the mortgage, pay the management company, do the maintenance that's
You walk
required.
away with $2,000.
I was getting about $2,000 a month.
Okay.
This property in Arizona, we leveled up. It's spectacular. We rented all spring training to a baseball player, right? I mean, it's that quality of place. In the last 12 months, we've probably made 5 times that in net.
Wow.
Right. Spectacular. And that was our first 12 months being
And you get to
available.
use it too, right?
And I can go down and use it if I like.
That's a really great segue into the next question, but keep
and
going.
in the next 6 weeks, it's not booked at all.
Oh, there you go.
Because it's going to be 110 degrees down there,
Great.
right? So
Right.
people wised up, and they use it a lot in spring training for Barrett Jackson, for the waste management, Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Super
and
Bowl was there.
Super Bowl was just there. In times where it's not nice here in the Northwest, right? We want to boot down to Arizona. It's a quick 2-hour flight,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's not going to do great when it's 110 degrees there and it's nice here.
Right.
But typically we get last minute bookings and they fill up the weekends. So that'll just 3 weekends a month will pay my payment.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. It's not like you have to rent the thing out for the entire year, every day, every week, every month, in order to cover your mortgage, and then
No.
I'm not going to ask whether you make a profit on that, but keeps the mortgage paid, and then you're still thinking about the appreciation and how much it's going to be worth in
Correct.
10 years, 15. Okay, really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I jump in with another question?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Sure. We're just going off script today. This is great. That's
Well,
what it's all about.
Kind of, yeah. But so you bought that property, which really could be classed as a second home in some respects, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people maybe aspire to, is having that, a second property. And whether they do that just to keep for themselves, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense financially, but they use it for rental purposes. How would you suggest approaching that decision to invest in a second property? What's the potential benefits and risks?
Yeah. If you're looking, so if you want a second home because you want a second home and you can afford the payment, buy whatever you want, right? Like I bought a cabin in Ronald, which is just outside of Suncadia. It's up in the mountains, gets snowy. It has a summer that's probably another month longer on either side than our summer here in the Northwest, and it gets 6 feet of snow in the winter.
Wow.
Right? So yeah, I bought it mainly for the winter, and so I like to be here in the summertime. So I don't really go over there much, but we rent the heck out of it in the summer because it's really nice over there.
Yeah.
And so I bought it mainly because I wanted a cabin in the mountains.
Right.
And so I thought, well, hey, if it rents really well in the summer, then someone else can pay the payment when I don't really plan to be there. I can use it in the winter, and I'll have to pay the payment in the months that I use it, right? In fact, I get to go over there probably about a week a month in the snowy times, right? Because I'm busy. I got other things to do. And the other 3 weeks every month it gets paid for or makes money, right? So summertime is spectacular. The wintertime I get to use it as much as I'd like and can, and it still gets the payment paid for it. But in that one's case, right, that we just had a few months where it was a little lackluster, right? It wasn't. I used it a little more than usual, and we didn't have bookings for whatever reason. And the payment came, and I was like, oh, I got to pay this payment. But I was like, that's the cabin I want. So it didn't really matter to me, right? Like I wanted the cabin, and I have the cabin.
Right.
In Arizona, don't get me wrong, I love the desert, but I bought that purely as an investment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I bought it where there wasn't a lot of seasonality, right? I think a lot of times people romance, like another good example, and I love this area too, but like Crescent Bar over on the Columbia River. They got about a 4-month season. And other than that, they don't rent a whole lot, right? And so if you really want that place, cool. But don't get too romantic about it really making a lot of money because it has a relatively short window season. I was looking at a condo in Orange Beach, Alabama. Same thing, right? From Memorial Day to Labor Day, booked solid.
Yeah.
Right.
The town shuts down other than that, right? So you got to be mindful of that. And so if I was going to buy a short-term rental, I would really look for something that has long season or no seasonality. Right. So you
wanted to just own it.
I just want to own it. Yeah, that's a place I want to go to. The other thing, and I haven't investigated this, but I've got some clients that are doing this where they're buying short-term rentals just like in city, like in the city of Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's laws and rules, and you got to check into that before you go out and buy it.
There's more every day.
More and more every day, right? But the idea behind that is that people that come to town and they don't want to put them up in a hotel, so they'd rather have a house where they can go to. Or like I've got another client where they do like mostly insurance bookings. So somebody's house catches fire, and they've got a 6-month remodel, or they have a fire, flood, tree, whatever. They've got to get out of their house, and they don't want to live in a hotel for 4 months. They need to rent a house.
Yeah.
As a long-term landlord, I don't want to rent a house to somebody for 4 months.
Right.
But if I've got a furnished short-term rental, I'd love to do a mid-term rental, right? Where you rent it for 4 months, because then I don't have all the cleanings and all the bookings and all the extra hassles, right?
And then there's the whole traveling nurse thing too, right?
Traveling nurse do a lot of that mid-term rental as well.
Got it.
Yep.
So it sounds like you really have to sit down and decide what's your end goal, right? So you talked about that right in the beginning. Is it because I want a second home just to enjoy and not worry about, because I have extra capital that I can do that with? Or is the intent that it's a full-on investment and therefore I have to plan in a different way?
Correct.
Or you can have best of both worlds. You can have that second home and still create an income from it.
Yeah, for me, that's my cabin in Ronald, right? It's remote, it's a great getaway, the fresh mountain air, all the things, and it mostly pays for itself.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
you knew that going in, right?
Yep, exactly.
So.
And I would have it even if it didn't pay for itself, right? Because
But that was your goal in the first place.
That was my
It
goal,
wasn't to
yeah.
make money. Your
And-
other properties are for that.
And every once in a while, I look at it, I'm like, oh, I wish that week wasn't booked. You know, like, I forgot to block that out. I want to go up there, right? But,
Yeah.
but then I see that, that week is $10,000. Okay, I can go somewhere else.
Yeah. You can get a really nice hotel somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the Christmas week books, you're like, oh, bummer, but awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get to use it,
Yeah,
but the
The
financial
times you
gain
want to
is-
be there are usually the high rental times.
Certainly.
Now you find that as well, Troy, with your house in Arizona?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Little light in the summer for sure, because it's
'Cause it's so
115
hot.
degrees. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Although we were
But
there
it's a
over,
dry heat, they say, right?
we were
What
there
is that
over
nonsense?
4th of July last year, and it was 110, 115, but it was great.
But you like the heat.
Oh,
though,
I do.
Yeah.
I'm
I did
I'm like
too.
a lizard.
I did too.
I
But
would be
literally,
like,
that
melting.
dry heat is like 15 degrees cooler than it feels like, right?
It
Like if
is.
it's 100 here,
And humid.
Oh, we're dying.
you're like melting,
I
right?
know,
Because
yeah.
there's so much moisture, right? But if it's 100 there, you're like, oh, this is nice.
This is nice, yeah.
Yeah. I still have loads of questions. What about you, Troy?
Let's go.
Dig
Rattle
in.
them off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I could just keep doing this all day, but
We're here to answer them.
Okay, well, I guess we're doing the whole thing, community and real estate, all in one thing.
Correct.
So we will ask you some community questions
Sure.
as well in a minute. But there's definitely some common misconceptions or myths surrounding property investment that you often come across, and how would you debunk them?
Yeah. Well, so I think a lot of times people think that it's a lot more work than it is, right?
I put my hand up. I'd be the one that say,
Yeah.
that sounds like a lot of hassle, a lot of work, and
Right.
a lot of stress.
Right. And so one of the comparisons I like to draw, so I like to tell people that I'm not a landlord. I'm a property owner. Right? I employ a landlord.
Okay.
Right? I have a property manager that does the landlord functions, right? They when the toilet leaks, they call the property manager. They don't call me.
You don't get involved
Right.
in all.
No, well, so not, I wouldn't say not at all, but like
Okay.
day to day, they're dealing with it. That we have kind of a cost threshold. If something's more than $500, they call me and tell
Okay.
me about what's going on, but they still handle it all, right?
Okay.
If it's under $500, they just fix it. Okay.
Fair enough.
And so I liken it to owning an automobile, right? If you said, well, hey, I don't want to own a car because I don't want to change my oil.
Well, you wouldn't do it yourself anyway, would you? You take it to the garage.
Precisely, right? So I own a car and I don't change the oil. To me, it's the same thing. I wouldn't not own property because I didn't want to deal with tenant issues because I got somebody that does that, right? Now, do I have risk? Yes. Do I have to pay for stuff every once in a while? Yeah. But does it take me hours and hours every single day? No. I have 128 total rental units, and that's spread out over 21 different properties in 7 different states. I spend about 5 hours a month looking
That all?
looking at books, making a few calls, checking in on things. That's it.
How about you, Troy?
What do you mean?
Well, how much time do you spend on your properties?
Not that much. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know it's a little different because you're
We've
in
got some
real
properties
estate, but
in Minnesota and Florida and Arizona, and so what was that? 5, 6 properties. So
Yeah, if you're building or mid renovation or doing a full flip, then it's a little more
Yeah.
on those.
oh yeah,
but
we
like
got one in Idaho we're building too.
Yeah, I
so
know.
you probably spend a little more time on that.
Yeah.
But maybe a lot more time on
I
that.
don't know if that was like a sigh, as in or yeah.
No, I mean everything rises and falls on communication. So
Yeah.
it's just getting the builder to communicate is sometimes a challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little more when you've got a project going.
Yeah.
But if I don't have any projects going, it's about 5 hours a month to handle that many.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody had 8 or 10, it should be less.
I feel like this conversation could go on for like a good hour or more, don't you?
Well, there's a heck of a lot more to talk about, so that's
Yeah.
why you would reach out to me or Cody for that one-on-one information.
Yeah.
Or
We live
Yeah.
and breathe this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm
every
like,
day,
okay,
every day.
like I could just keep going with the questions, but let's just change tracks just a little bit. I think it'd probably be a good idea to have Cody come on again and talk about more of this stuff.
Happy to do it.
oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
But obviously we are a community-focused podcast, so let's talk about Woodinville a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have some hidden gems, favorite places to go?
Yeah. Well, so I have a passion in Woodinville. I mean, obviously the wine, of course, but
I was gonna say, I thought that's what you were gonna say.
but no,
just
no.
wine.
So one of my most favorite charities and ways to give back to community is for pets.
Oh,
And so Woodinville is the home of Homeward Pet.
okay.
And Homeward Pet's a no-kill animal shelter in Woodinville in Washington here. And I was on the board of directors for 3 years for them.
Oh, cool.
We just did a big auction, raised a bunch of money for the homeless shelter. And so that's one of my favorite things over here in Woodinville. Whenever I get this way, I try to pop in and swing through
It's
the
a
dog
great
and cat
place,
room and
yeah.
say hello to the folks I know over there.
Yeah, that's a dangerous place for my family to go.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah, they do good work and always need help. So
Yeah. And favorite winery? We already talked about this one that we're drinking today is really good. Any others?
it is. Yeah. Well, I'm partial to a newer one we just found, which is just around the corner from you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Alluvium Cellars. They're a sweet couple locally here, and we actually held my girlfriend's birthday party there. So yeah, did a little DJ and a photo booth and lots of fun stuff. They
Oh, that's fun.
let us have the winery for the night, and I'm
they
a big
move
fan
into
of
their
their
new
alpha.
space?
They are in there. They now
Yeah.
have, so they have their winery. I guess I
Their
don't know,
production area?
Production area around the corner, which also has a tasting room,
Uh-huh.
and then around the corner they put in a new tasting room as well. So
Okay, and that's right down the street by Armstrong and
Mhm.
Shake and Go and the car wash.
We've just got so many great things around here.
I know.
yeah, yeah, I love that warehouse district too. I haven't
Yeah.
been to one in a while, but they used to do that Passport, where you can just kind of wander from winery to
Yeah.
winery to winery.
They still have the
I was
passport.
going to say they do still have it, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Passport to Woodinville was very
Yeah.
good.
And did you get that through the Woodinville Wine Country?
Woodville Wine Country sells those, yeah.
And guess what? We are there.
We are their premier realtors.
What do you
I
know?
can say that.
Yes,
I
we
can
are.
spit it out.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot, but yet we've barely scratched the surface on investing. I think it would be a good idea, definitely, to have you come back. But in the meantime, where can people get hold of you, Cody?
Yeah, sure. So our website is just the Touchette team. So Touche is a little tough. I'll spell it for you. TOUCHETTE. So thetouchetteam.com. My cell phone number is 206-909-2007.
And Troy, people want to get hold of you and talk more about investment properties or buying properties in general. Where can they get hold of you?
We are at Tend, T-E-N-D, hometeam.com. Tendhometeam.com and 206-504-3660. Or just Google Troy Anderson. We'll come right up.
Yeah, and both these guys are very willing to chat with you about any of your investing property needs, so give them a call. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, what should they do, Troy?
Well, they should, if they're watching it on YouTube, they should ding the ding it.
Yeah,
They should
listeners,
definitely
if
subscribe
you're
on their
looking for a
favorite
real estate
platform.
company that truly cares about the
Every
community
time.
and
All
has
right,
a
well,
wealth of
thanks very much
experience to
for
local
listening.
market.
We'll see you next time.
Look no further than Tend Home Team.
Thanks, guys.
With
Bye-bye.
over 20 years of experience here in the Pacific Northwest, we know the ins and outs of the real estate market like the back of our hand. Whether you're buying or selling a home, our team of experts is here to guide you every step of the way. And best of all, we make the process fun and stress-free. We love getting to know our clients and helping them find their dream home or sell their property quickly and easily. So if you want a real estate company that's truly focused on you and your needs, choose Tend Home Team. We can't wait to work with you. Contact us at tendhometeam.com or 206-504-3660.